Marcus had always loved sandwiches. To him, there was something magical about a simple meal, neatly packed between slices of bread, carrying flavors that could lift a heavy heart or make a long day feel lighter. Today, in the middle of a bustling interstellar spaceport, his favorite turkey and cheese creation felt even more precious. He had arrived on Kepler's Station 9 only an hour ago, stepping off the small transport shuttle into the bright chaos of the main concourse. Ships of all shapes and sizes buzzed past, their engines humming low, and the air smelled faintly of ozone, metal, and the kind of exotic spices Marcus could never hope to identify. He walked slowly, savoring the first bite of his sandwich, and watched a sea of different creatures move around him. There were beings with scales, beings with luminous skin, some with more than 2 arms, and others who seemed to float above the floor rather than walk. Marcus had seen alien life on holo videos and in textbooks, but nothing compared to the reality of it. The sheer variety was staggering, and yet, despite the incredible differences, everyone here seemed to be just living their lives, chatting, shopping, laughing, eating, hurrying to catch transports. It was ordinary and extraordinary all at once. He finally settled at a small table near a window that looked out onto the landing platforms. A steady stream of ships landed and took off, each one with a slightly different hum, like a unique musical note. Marcus unwrapped the rest of his sandwich and took another bite, feeling the warmth and familiarity of it settle in his stomach. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the simple pleasure sink in. Then he noticed her. She was standing just a few feet away, looking around as if she had just arrived herself. Marcus didn't know what struck him first: the way her eyes seemed to reflect the lights of the station, or the gentle way she held herself, calm but entirely aware of everything happening around her. She was tall but not imposing, and her skin had a faint, pearly sheen that caught the light like water under the sun. Her hair seemed to move slightly as though a soft breeze surrounded her, though Marcus couldn't feel any air stirring. She looked lost. Without thinking, Marcus smiled at her and held up his sandwich. "Hey," he said, his voice a little unsure. "Want some?" "I made it myself." "I am Leora," she said. Her voice was soft but carried a resonance that made Marcus feel as if she was speaking to more than just him. "Leora," Marcus repeated, smiling. "Here, have some." He broke the sandwich in half and offered her one piece. She accepted it with a small, grateful smile and took a bite. Marcus watched her carefully, wondering if she had ever eaten human food before. Her eyes lit up just slightly as she chewed, and Marcus felt a small rush of pride. The sandwich wasn't much, just turkey and cheese, but it seemed to please her. "You like it?" he asked, curious. "It is different," she said carefully. "Good." They ate in companionable silence for a while, Marcus sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee he had grabbed from a nearby vendor. He found himself stealing glances at Leora, noticing the small, subtle things. The way her fingers flexed as she held the sandwich, the faint shimmer around her as if light bent slightly when it touched her, and the way her eyes moved, scanning the crowd but never in a nervous way. Marcus had always been curious about alien cultures, and now he felt the perfect opportunity to ask questions. "So, are you traveling alone?" he asked. "I am," she replied, tilting her head slightly, "for now. I'm an engineer, mostly fixing old tech and making small improvements. Nothing glamorous." They continued talking, sharing small stories about their travels, the strange foods they'd tried, and the odd situations they'd encountered. Marcus felt a strange warmth growing in his chest. He had expected this day to be routine and perhaps lonely, yet here he was, sharing a simple meal with someone who seemed completely extraordinary and somehow ordinary at the same time. A small alarm chimed from a nearby kiosk, and several attendants hurried past, bowing slightly as they glanced toward Leora. Marcus noticed a brief flicker in the air around her, like a faint shimmer that seemed to pulse with awareness. He frowned slightly. "Do people follow you around a lot?" he asked. Leora's smile didn't falter. "I have some attention, but it is not dangerous." "Do not worry." The crowd around them began to thin as people moved to catch their transports, and the sun, or whatever artificial star powered the station, began to dip toward the horizon of the massive observation dome. Marcus realized he had almost finished his sandwich and that he hadn't noticed the hours slipping by. "Would you like to walk?" he asked. "The station has a lot of odd corners. You might enjoy seeing them." "I would like that." Marcus found himself explaining in basic terms, not wanting to confuse her, but also wanting her to see the beauty and cleverness of human designs. She listened with an attentiveness that was almost reverent. "You humans are "Remarkable," she said at one point, stopping to look at a simple water recycling device Marcus had been particularly proud of. "You take small things and make them work for many. That is a rare skill." Marcus pointed out a small seating area with a view of the galaxy beyond. Stars stretched out endlessly, and the soft glow of distant planets painted the space in gentle colors. "It is beautiful," Leora said softly, leaning on the railing. Marcus agreed. "It is. Sometimes I think we humans take beauty for granted because we see it all the time. But out here it feels bigger." Then, without warning, a small child, a tiny alien with bright eyes and 4 arms, raced past, nearly bumping into them. Leora laughed softly, a clear, musical sound, and gently steadied the child before it ran off again. Marcus noticed that even small creatures instinctively responded to her presence, calming down or smiling without fear. "You have influence," Marcus said carefully. "Even small beings listen to you." And yet, despite all the subtle signs of power, she had accepted his simple offer of a sandwich without hesitation, without fear, without expectation. As the station's artificial day began to fade, Marcus realized he had learned more in a few hours from this young alien than he had from years of reading reports and manuals. He felt grateful, humbled, and more alive than he had in a long time. Leora turned to him, her eyes reflecting the distant stars. "Thank you, Marcus," she said simply, "for sharing, for your honesty, for your small but important gesture." "I just wanted to be polite." They walked back toward the central concourse, side by side, the noise and bustle surrounding them like a muted symphony. Marcus felt a strange mixture of excitement and calm, as if he had stepped into a story far larger than himself, yet somehow intimately connected to it. By the time they reached the edge of the station where transports waited, Marcus felt a certainty he couldn't explain. Meeting Leora had changed something in him. He didn't yet know how or why, but he felt it deep in his bones, the quiet promise that this day, this simple, ordinary, extraordinary day, would be remembered forever. And though Marcus didn't know it yet, Leora's life, her decisions, her empire, her responsibilities, would soon intersect with his in ways no one could have predicted. For now, though, there was only the moment. A human and a young alien, sharing a sandwich, and discovering a connection that no technology, no politics, no distance could ever erase. Marcus had thought the day could not get any more remarkable. Walking alongside Leora, the young alien who had accepted his sandwich so simply, he felt a mix of excitement and curiosity that was almost dizzying. He had spent hours in spaceports, in bustling cities, and among creatures of all kinds, but nothing had made him feel so alive. Leora was extraordinary, yes, but there was something more, something about her presence that seemed to quietly shift the world around her. They moved toward a quieter section of the station, past shops selling rare minerals, floating gadgets, and foods Marcus had never imagined. Leora walked with grace, her steps light, almost floating above the floor. Occasionally, she would pause to watch some small creature, a hovering drone or a display, and Marcus would watch her. Her eyes were like nothing he had ever seen. They were deep and reflective, filled with curiosity and understanding. It was as if she could see far more than what lay in front of them. "I have always wondered," Marcus said after a pause, "do aliens like you travel often alone?" "I sometimes prefer it." She spoke with a calm confidence, and Marcus noticed that her words carried weight, even if they seemed simple. He nodded slowly, trying not to seem too curious, though the truth was, he wanted to ask so many questions. "And what do you do when you travel? Do you explore, learn new things?" Marcus looked at her, surprised. "You notice small things, you care about details, you create, repair, improve. That is a rare skill, and it is important." "We really do." Something about Leora commanded respect, though she seemed completely unaware of it. "Do people always treat you this way?" he asked. Leora smiled faintly. "It depends. Sometimes they are cautious, sometimes respectful. I do not ask for it. It comes naturally to some, perhaps." And yet she accepted his small offer of a sandwich without hesitation, without expectation, without concern for rank or status. That simple gesture, he realized, was unusual. In his experience, those with influence often treated ordinary kindness as curiosity at best. They reached a quiet terrace overlooking a transport dock, where ships of all sizes came and went. The lights of the docking bays reflected on Leora's pearly skin, making her appear almost ethereal. Marcus felt a sudden urge to ask the question that had been growing in his mind, but he hesitated. Somehow, he feared the answer would change everything about this peaceful moment. Instead, he said lightly, "Do you like traveling to new places? To know how things function, to understand what can be improved? Maybe humans have a way of doing that naturally." Marcus had seen floating plants before, but he had never noticed how beautiful the patterns of light could be until she interacted with them. "They respond to touch," he said. "Or, well, to energy, but your energy seems different. They respond differently to you. There's something calming about being near you. I don't understand it." He felt comfortable around her more than he had with most humans he had known. Her presence was unusual, yes, but it was not intimidating. It was inviting, warm, encouraging. "I've never met anyone like you," Marcus said quietly. "I have met many," she replied, "but perhaps not someone who notices as you do. You see small things, and that is valuable." She had a way of making ordinary observations feel meaningful. And then, unexpectedly, she added, "You have a gift, Marcus. The way you care, the way you see, it is unusual among your kind. Do not lose it." Planets rotated in slow elegance, and the vast stretches of space seemed to stretch forever. Marcus felt a deep sense of connection to everything: the station, the travelers, the universe itself. And he realized that the simple act of sharing a sandwich, of being kind to someone, had brought him here, to this extraordinary moment. Suddenly, a small commotion erupted near the main concourse. Marcus and Leora turned to see a group of officials, wearing shimmering uniforms, approaching quickly. They paused slightly when they saw Leora, bowing and exchanging respectful nods. Marcus furrowed his brow. He had seen similar gestures before, but this was different. The officials spoke quietly, consulting each other, and then one of them stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Your Highness," he said. Marcus froze. He blinked, not sure he had heard correctly. "Your Highness," he whispered, nudging Leora gently. She smiled faintly, almost shyly. "It is only formalities," she said, but her voice carried a note of calm authority that made even Marcus pause. Marcus looked around, his mind racing. Suddenly, he realized what all the subtle signs had meant: the way people instinctively gave her space, the quiet reverence, the small shimmer in the air. Leora was not just an ordinary traveler. She was important, more than important. She ruled. She rules the galaxy?" Marcus asked in disbelief, his voice low. Leora nodded slightly. "I am responsible for many, yes. But I try to remain unseen when I can, to observe without influencing unnecessarily." "I did not think it necessary," she replied, calm and unflustered. "You treated me as a person, not as a ruler. That is rare." I didn't know," he said again, almost in a whisper. "That is good," Leora said. "It means your actions are genuine." She did not seek admiration. She simply shared what she thought was important. Marcus felt humbled. He had often thought humans were small, limited, fragile. But seeing Leora's perspective, he realized that human qualities, curiosity, kindness, attention to detail, could matter, even on a galactic scale. Leora had reminded him that greatness could be quiet, and that simple acts could carry extraordinary meaning. As the artificial day of the station drew to a close, Marcus and Leora walked back toward the docking area. The officials who had escorted her lingered nearby but did not intrude. Marcus felt a mixture of awe and gratitude. He had met someone who could have been distant and unapproachable, yet she had chosen to connect with him in a simple, human way. "Marcus," Leora said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence, "I will leave soon. But I want you to remember this: small gestures, honesty, care, these matter more than power or fear. Do not forget it." "I won't," he promised. Leora smiled softly. "Good, then we will meet again in some way when the time is right." And sometimes it began with a single, simple act of kindness. For Marcus, that act had been a sandwich, and for the young empress named Leora, it had been a glimpse of the remarkable potential of humans. As the starship disappeared into the dark stretch of space, Marcus felt something shift inside him. He did not yet know how, but he knew that this encounter, unexpected, extraordinary, and simple, would change the course of his life. The galaxy was larger than he could imagine, yet in one quiet, peaceful moment, he had glimpsed its heart. And he had been reminded that even a human, humble and small, could leave a mark that stretched far beyond himself. Marcus walked slowly back through the bustling concourse of Kepler Station 9, his mind still filled with images of Leora's starship disappearing into the distance. He felt a strange mix of awe and disbelief. It was one thing to know that extraordinary beings existed in the galaxy, but it was another to meet one, someone who ruled entire star systems, someone who had shared a moment of genuine connection with him, a simple human. He wandered aimlessly for a while, thinking about their conversation, about her words on kindness, observation, and attention to small details. Each sentence lingered in his mind, echoing in his thoughts like a soft melody. Small gestures, honesty, care, these matter more than power or fear. Those words were simple, yet they carried a weight Marcus had never felt before. He finally found a quiet corner of the station, a small garden that floated in zero gravity, with bubbles of water drifting slowly through the air. Marcus sat down on a bench, staring at the stars beyond the station's observation dome. He thought about the galaxy, vast and infinite, filled with creatures, planets, and civilizations. And he thought about himself, one human, small, ordinary, yet capable of moments that could ripple through that vastness. The day passed, and the artificial lights of the station dimmed to simulate night. Marcus had barely slept the previous night, and he felt exhaustion creeping in. But he could not rest, not yet. Leora's words, her presence, her kindness, they were still alive inside him, urging him to pay attention, to act, to notice the things that truly mattered. A soft vibration on his communicator pulled him from his thoughts. He glanced at the screen and saw an unfamiliar symbol, a simple, elegant emblem he could not recognize. Hesitant, he accepted the incoming message. "Marcus," the message began. It was brief, precise, and polite. "I am Leora. I wish to speak with you again. A matter has arisen that requires your perspective. Will you meet me at the outer observation deck?" He had not expected this. The last few hours had felt extraordinary enough, yet now the Empress herself was requesting his counsel. He glanced around, half expecting someone to emerge from the shadows and tell him this was a mistake. But the message seemed genuine. Without hesitation, he typed back, "Yes. I will come immediately." A ramp extended and Leora stepped out. She looked as calm and serene as before, but Marcus noticed a faint seriousness in her expression. She walked toward him, her eyes focused, and for a moment the entire universe seemed to shrink around them. "Marcus," she said softly, but with authority that made him straighten instinctively. "Thank you for coming." He watched as her hands moved gracefully through the air, adjusting floating displays that appeared with a soft glow. Marcus had seen many advanced technologies, but Leora used them with an elegance and simplicity that made them seem almost alive. "There is a situation," she began, her voice calm but deliberate. "A new colony on the edge of our Federation faces difficulties. Resources are scarce, and the systems supporting them are old and failing. The leaders are divided on how to help. Some suggest expanding the supply ships, others recommend waiting for natural development. They cannot agree." He had expected to meet an empress, but he had not expected to be asked for advice on matters that affected countless lives. "What do you think?" she asked finally, turning to him. Her eyes, calm and observant, fixed on him in a way that made him pause. Marcus swallowed. He had never advised anyone on this scale before. "Well, I think the first step is understanding the real needs," he said slowly. "Not just what they say they need, but what the colony actually needs to survive and grow. Sometimes, adding more resources doesn't solve the problem if the systems themselves are inefficient. But the Council disagrees, and I wanted an outside perspective, someone not involved in politics. Your honesty, your practical thinking, that is why I asked for you." Leora listened attentively, asking questions when necessary, and occasionally offering insight based on her vast experience governing multiple systems. Marcus was amazed at how she combined intelligence with empathy. She did not simply make decisions based on efficiency. She considered the well-being of everyone involved. Her approach reminded him of how humans approached problem-solving, not just for power or recognition, but for understanding and care. By the time they had finished, the sun, or its artificial equivalent, had begun to rise in the station's dome. Marcus felt both exhausted and exhilarated. Together, they had created a plan that balanced practicality with humanity, a solution that could help the colony thrive without unnecessary waste or conflict. "You have a rare gift, Marcus," Leora said softly. "Not only do you see the practical details, but you consider the human element. That is why your perspective is invaluable." He had never thought of himself as extraordinary, yet here he was, helping shape decisions that could affect thousands. I try to care," he said humbly. "That is enough," Leora replied with a faint smile. "It is more than enough." Marcus felt a sense of peace he had never known, a quiet joy in being part of something larger than himself. "Marcus," Leora said after a pause, The galaxy is vast and there will always be challenges, but it is also full of possibilities. You have reminded me that even small gestures like sharing a sandwich can have far-reaching effects. Never forget that. He had never expected to hear such words from someone so powerful, someone who could influence the lives of billions. "I thank you," he said simply. She smiled, her eyes reflecting the distant stars. "Do not thank me, continue to be yourself, that is all I ask." He felt the same warmth as before, the same calm authority, and the same quiet encouragement. As she boarded, Marcus watched her ascend into the starship, the engines glowing softly. The ship lifted off, disappearing into the galaxy beyond. Marcus stood for a long time, staring after it, feeling a profound sense of connection and purpose. In the days that followed, Marcus returned to his work as an engineer, but he approached it differently now. He paid more attention to details, not just in machines, but in people. He noticed how small gestures, a smile, a kind word, a helpful action, could ripple outward, affecting more than he ever imagined. Messages arrived occasionally from Leora, brief and polite, but filled with thoughtfulness. She asked for updates on projects, shared observations about distant systems, and sometimes simply sent encouragement. Marcus cherished each message, feeling both awe and inspiration. Over time, his influence grew quietly. Colleagues noticed his careful, thoughtful approach, and he began to inspire others to consider both practical and human elements in their work. It was not fame or recognition that drove him, but a simple desire to make life better, to improve things gently, thoughtfully. One day, months later, Marcus received a message that made him pause. Leora had requested his presence at a council meeting, not as an official, but as an advisor, someone to offer honest perspective without political bias. He felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The galaxy was vast, its problems complex, and yet here he was, a human, invited to participate because of his simple honesty and care. He prepared carefully, reviewing reports and data, thinking not of prestige, but of how he could help. When he arrived, Leora greeted him with her familiar calm smile. The council members, some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, watched him curiously, but Leora's presence was steady and grounding. During the meeting, Marcus spoke clearly, focusing on practical solutions, asking questions, and considering the needs of all involved. The council listened, sometimes surprised by his insights, often impressed by his attention to small but crucial details. Leora watched him with quiet pride, knowing that this human's perspective could shape decisions in ways few others could. By the end of the meeting, a plan had been formed that combined strategy, compassion, and efficiency. Marcus felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that his contribution had mattered, not because of his rank, but because of his humanity. Later, as they floated together in a quiet observation deck, Leora turned to him. "Marcus," she said softly, "you have reminded me why humans are valuable. Your small gestures, your care, your honesty, they matter more than you know. Together, we make a difference." That small gesture had begun a chain of events that had changed not just his life, but the lives of countless others. As Leora's starship prepared to leave again, she gave him a final smile. "Continue to be yourself, Marcus. The galaxy needs humans like you." He smiled, knowing that the future was wide open, filled with possibilities, and that the simple acts of kindness and care he offered could continue to shape the universe in ways he could never have imagined. The galaxy was vast, the challenges endless, but his humanity, was powerful in its quiet, simple way. And Marcus, the engineer who once only cared for sandwiches, had learned that even the smallest gestures could leave a mark that stretched across the stars.